and you go, no, today we're going to turn right.
Hi everybody. Welcome to Gravel Union Talks, a podcast series full of inspiring stories, news and events from the world of gravel. Each month we will be talking with guests who are passionate about riding off the beaten track, adventure riding, bikepacking and gravel racing. I'm your host Carlo, and behind the microphone in Newcastle, UK, it's Olly. Olly, how you doing?
Very good, thank you.
And we have a special guest in every episode, and this time it's all about guiding, ride guiding. For today's episode, we're going to be getting an inside view of the adventure travel industry with professional cycling guide Francis King. He's worked as a guide since 2016 and is going to be giving us his insights on the highs and lows of being paid to ride your bike as a career. Francis was based in Newcastle. So he's joining Olly in the Gravel Union UK office.
The gravel... It's quite cramped, but we haven't done it in face to face before. But it's good.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, well, thanks that you made the trip over to the Gravel Union UK office, which sounds
sounds a lot posher than it actually is.
I know. We're all in our own houses probably. It's nice to have a guest in the show. It's like the second local edition in a row, because last time I had John was over here at my place, and now it's like a doorstep challenge, Olly.
It is exactly it.
But before we head over to our main guest, Francis, we'll talk a little bit about the website. What's the biggest news on the gravelunion.cc website, Olly?
Well, I figured, seeing as Francis was here and we were going to be talking about travel gravel, that I ought to find some stories that were suitable for that. So the first one is just went up yesterday, so it's not super popular yet, but it's very relevant. Do you remember a couple of episodes ago we had Saoirse Potty came on and we talked to her about her work with Bikepacking Buds? Well, she's off on a huge adventure. She's going to ride with a friend of hers from South Africa up the west coast of Africa, through I think 7 countries in total, up to Kenya, and she set off a couple of days ago. But she's doing it on a bamboo bike that she had constructed locally. So she's written us a great kind of introduction piece to what her adventure is going to be like, what she's going to be doing, what they hope to see, and a bit about the bike as well. So that was that's the first story. It seemed particularly relevant.
10,000 kilometers on a bamboo bike.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing.
And she produced everything locally, right? The bike is...
The bike was produced locally, yeah. And the equipment she bought out with her because it came from Shimano. But the bike itself was built locally. And it's the first time she's even ridden it. So it's a heck of a test to go from a brand new bike to a 10,000 kilometer ride across Africa.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm very curious on her stories because, I've seen a few bamboo bikes before, but I actually never had somebody taking on the adventure of riding 10,000 kilometers with such a bike.
Yeah,
with any bike, it's a challenge. So we're looking forward to her stories because she's gonna report back to us.
Exactly it. There'll be regular updates, and she's going to be doing a podcast on the road as well. So we'll put links into that when it's published.
Okay, excellent. Because the episode with Saoirse was really, really popular. Yeah. One of the most popular, I think, the most popular episode of our podcast series. So we'll put we put her through, because when she reports back to us, then you will know through our website gravelunion.cc. The most popular stories on gravelunion.cc of last month, Olly.
I found a couple that are really relevant to this. The first one is all about working as a guide on a gravel holiday. So it seemed very appropriate having Francis here. It was written by Claudia Gerosa, who's an Italian rider based in the north of Italy, and she rides for the Shimano Gravel Alliance. And her real passion in life is getting people who aren't cycling, particularly women who aren't into riding at the minute, to inspire them and motivate them to try and push themselves and to do something that's a little bit of a challenge, a little bit out of their comfort zone. And so it's all about what it's like to work as a guide on a recent gravel weekend that she did.
Well, there's a nice connection with our guest of today.
It seemed like a perfect fit. It's a really good story. She's incredibly inspirational and she motivates really well. So everybody who rides with her, I think, will love everything that she does. So it seemed like a very appropriate story.
And is there other also tips on there for, because it's a women's only camp?
Yeah, she talks about the difference of working with female riders rather than mixed groups, and how she works with them, what she does to motivate them, to inspire them, to encourage them, and how all about the general feeling of it, what the atmosphere is like.
Yeah, I think there's well, Francis probably knows better than we do, but there will be a different dynamic also in the group.
Exactly it.
Okay, well, we'll check that out on the website. Anything else on the most popular
the other
list?
one we've run a couple of stories from Clef Recknell, who's a bike packer who's based on the south coast of the UK, and she's really into multi-day adventure bike packing trips. She went out earlier in the year with her partner and did an event in Croatia called the Seven Serpents, and they had hideous weather. It rained and rained and rained and rained, and eventually she scratched from the event because it was everything went wrong and it was quite a disaster. But the organisers have just launched the recap film from the event, which captures some of the trials and tribulations of doing a multi-day event in awful weather, and it's brilliant. It's really beautiful. So I put that up last week. So yes, that's on the website now.
Yeah, it's a great video, and it's also a great region to ride your bike. And well, the video most definitely tells that the weather was horrible.
It does look hard.
Well, they had rain, it seems.
And the torrential kind of roads washed away, and then huge, incredibly strong winds. There was one bridge crossing that was closed because there was 100-mile-an-hour winds, and the riders weren't allowed to go across this particular bridge. So, yeah, it sounded pretty hard.
Yeah, that's something that you don't want. But
no. But the film is great.
Yeah, that's always the other side, is that it makes a great movie. So check out the film on the website. I think it's time to go to our main guest of today. Yeah, on the other end of the bumper again. We're going to talk to a bike guide, and we're going to find out whether it's the life of a professional gravel cycling guide. Is that a big holiday? But first, let us ask Francis to introduce himself, and then we'll talk a bit on his work and how did he come to get a gravel cycling guide. Francis?
Hi, as Carlo said, based in Newcastle in northeast England. Been doing this for 7 years now, all across the UK and also in mainland Europe.
And it's not just a big holiday, is it, Francis? That's the misconception.
It's about making sure people are safe on their holiday, and introducing them to new places to get out and ride their bikes.
I think it's one of the jobs that most cyclists always think once in their life. Well, that looks great to me. Being on the bike all day, showing people the nicest places. What's the other side of the medal, Francis?
The other side is the organisational side. Making sure everything's planned in advance, making sure everybody's safe, and dealing with stuff when it does go wrong. If somebody goes into it thinking it's about their riding, they're the wrong person for the job. It's the motivation has got to be about making sure you're there to help other people enjoy their riding. If you get that right, you enjoy your riding as well. But that's not the primary point of it.
You spend a lot of time actually not riding at your capacity, is my guess. You're probably, because you're looking after your customers, you're trying to motivate them, you're trying to inspire them, you're probably not pushing yourself anything like as hard as you would if you were out riding with a group of friends or just riding by yourself.
Yeah, there's a couple of parts to that. One is the pace. And when I started doing it, it was a bit like when the kids were small. You've got to layer up an extra layer compared to riding with your pals.
Yes.
Because the bigger the group, the bigger I'd call the faff factor.
Yeah.
There's more people will stop more often. There's more things will go wrong, and there's somebody trying to adjust some piece of clothing or bicycle or whatever. So you've got to be layered up to prepare for that.
How did you get into it in the beginning, Francis? What inspired you to go from being a cyclist to being a professional cyclist, being paid to do it?
Well, I'd been working as a public relations consultant, and had come to a point where I really did need a change of direction. And some people say you shouldn't pursue your hobby as a career change, but I had a big think about this, and I got introduced to the guys from Saddle Skedaddle, who are a cycling holiday company based here in Newcastle. And they were looking for new guides, and they were also helping to train people up. So I thought I'd give that a go. They run their recruitment weekend the first weekend after the new year in the English Lake District. So it's very low single digit centigrade figures. It's an immediate filter for who's the right sort of person. Yeah. If you're not up for standing around in the icy cold, then that's an immediate filter for who might work at this role.
If you don't get as far as lunchtime, they know that you're definitely not going to be able to do it professionally. It's slightly harsh, but it's a good way of testing. What kind of things, when you did your assessment and your recruitment, what kind of things did they ask of you, or what did they test? What do they want to know?
There's obviously you've got to be a competent cyclist to some level, but that's absolutely not the most important thing. You got to be a decent trail mechanic, maybe not a qualified workshop mechanic, but somebody with the practical thinking to be able to fix something out on the trail, including pretty big, pretty complicated issues on bikes and setups you've possibly never seen before, or likely never seen before. Navigation's an issue. They make you do it the old school way with maps and compasses. So we were navigating in a reasonably featureless area, but had to do some precise navigation with that. You run through incident and accident management scenarios, and they talk to you about how you'd react in certain circumstances. So once they decided who they wanted to move forward with, the next phase of training was actually going through all those types of scenarios to training in the field.
So you need to be prepared for anything is maybe a little bit too hard to tell, but for all kinds of incidents you should be. And I think it's also important that you always stay cool and collected, because a panicky guy on leading a group is not the best idea, I think.
Absolutely. When I started doing it, I was nervous. I was worried about what if something happens, what if something else happens. But with experience, you deal with something calmly, you deal with it effectively. And although there's no way that you can imagine every type of scenario that's going to happen, you build that confidence, knowing that whatever it is, you can fix it.
Because I've been riding with actually one of your routes, Francis.
Yeah.
When I was in Newcastle, we did a ride with the entire Gravel Union crew, Olly and myself, and you get to some really remote areas in the north of England and Scotland, because that's the area that you ride mostly.
That's the areas we ride locally. I mean, we're really lucky here in Newcastle because of the industrial heritage. Means there are lots of tracks and trails, wagon ways, old railway lines, that it's easy to escape from the city and get out into that sort of countryside.
What kind of issues can you face? Right, we don't want to deal with all the negative bits, but what kind of things do go wrong if you're with a group and you're in the middle of nowhere?
There are the normal spills that you sort of referred to there, but in most cases, because we manage it, we risk assess in advance. Those, touch wood, are sort of minor scrapes and bumps are the usual thing. If it does become more serious, then you might have to call a mountain rescue team or so on. But I'm in a fortunate position not to have had to do that so far. But it's about managing the group, reminding your clients that they are in very remote areas. So part of it is riding within your skills envelope. Keeping safe, keeping happy.
And the great thing, I guess, with riding in gravel bikes is that it feels fast, even if you're not actually going that quick in comparison to perhaps an off-road mountain bike trip. Does that help, do you think, the fact that they get the sensation of speed and the thrill and the adventure, but the speeds are slower than you would get if you're on the road or if you're potentially on a mountain bike trail.
That can be double-sided. We get a real mixture of customers, and that includes people who haven't ridden a gravel bike before. So they might come from a roadie background, they might come from a mountain bike background. So for some of them, riding with us is a taster for what this new breed of cycling is all about, what the gravel riding is. So in many cases, it might be the first time they've ridden a drop bar bike off the road. You've got mountain bikers who may be used to much bigger, faster tyre on what looks to them like a really easy descent. Mm-hmm. But it's also making sure they understand they haven't got quite as much rubber on the trail as they would have on their mountain bike.
What do you think with the newbies? What's important to remind them of, or what do they miss in their skill set?
It depends which direction they're coming from. The mountain bikers probably in terms of the terrain. Once you've got them to dial it back a bit, that's less. If people have done no off-road riding before, it's understanding the traction on the loose surfaces, and both for climbing and descending, and staying within that skills envelope.
Presumably your customers are given advice in advance on what to expect, or how each day is going to run, what the scenery will be like, what the riding is like. How often do you get people that turn up that haven't read the information or that don't know what they've let themselves in for?
It does happen. It doesn't happen very often, fortunately. There's with the people I work with most of the time, they get talked through the level to make sure it's the right sort of level of holiday from them. They're asked about the type of bike they ride and the distances they're used to doing. Very occasionally, you get somebody who's a regular, calls themselves a regular cyclist, but that might be once every 3 months. Mm. So sometimes you'll get somebody turn up who's not as fit as they could be for that trip. In most cases, managing that is easier if the person's self-aware. If they're aware their fitness is not what it should be, we can usually flex, not flex the route, but advise them maybe sit out the section from the coffee break to lunchtime to save some energy for the afternoon, sort of thing. So when it does happen, we work around to make sure, as far as possible, that person still gets a really good holiday too.
You're generally working as part of a team as well, aren't you, with other members of staff, so that to help deal with variation in ability or variation in skills, up to a point anyway.
Yeah, now, so typically we'll have a point guide and a tail guide in the riding group, and then with another colleague on the backup vehicle.
And how big are the groups that you do?
Maximum is 14 on any ride. For gravel, it's usually up to 12.
And how do you do that? Because if people, group dynamics are always important. I feel when you ride with a group and there's a good atmosphere, everything goes smoothly. But if there's somebody that is just maybe a little bit placed out of the middle, and you mentioned self-aware of talents is sometimes also is something that people are overestimating themselves. How do you deal with that to keep the atmosphere in the group nice?
It depends on your character very much, but often the group will manage that themselves to some extent, particularly if somebody's charging off, not waiting for the guide, or we also have an issue where sometimes now we have a mixture of people with e-bikes, that it's somebody that the clients should recognize they've joined into a group holiday. Mm-hmm. If they want to ride their own ride, they're probably the more adventurous bikepacking type who would go and do that and organize it for themselves rather than come to a company to help them fulfill that. And it's most of our clients are reasonably time poor, busy people in their everyday lives that don't spend the hours that someone like Ollie or myself would do poring over maps and aerial photos to work out where the next ride is, but would come to us to do that bit for them and give them that reassurance so they get the most of it out of the holiday time they have available.
And that's the main reason for them joining in a group ride, that they just show up and do the ride. Rather, because it really is, if you want to do it properly, preparing a ride is a lot of work.
That's right, and that's that's why there's a role for us for people who either don't have the time or the full skill set to do that.
Some of it, I guess, is about the social aspect as well, isn't it? It's meeting people with a similar outlook or similar interests or similar passion. And if they come on a group trip, presumably a lot of them will get on and they become friends as well as just signing up for a holiday together.
Yeah, you see people who meet up on these trips who then by the end of the week or the fortnight, they're looking at the schedules for the following year, saying which trip are you going on? We might go on the same trip.
Yeah. Okay. That's and maybe you can give us a few examples of. You said I'm doing like the getting out there, doing a week holiday or a fortnight holiday. Is it only like multiple days, or also like a 1 day ride? What you do?
Most of the work I do is holiday trips. So yeah, usually a week's length is typical.
Okay, so yeah, then the whole social aspect is really important, yeah. And joining in and sharing the rides and the experiences is one of the benefits of riding in a group on a holiday, I guess.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that I get most out of doing the job is that we like finding the trails to ride and taking the time to do that, but getting to share that with other people is one of the most rewarding bits of that. Also helping people through the challenges. It might be the toughest climb they've ever done or a little tricky section that they're not sure of. You can talk them through riding that, and you can see people's riding develop as well.
That must give you a real sense of satisfaction when they go home and they're a bit fitter and they're a bit more skilled and they're a bit more knowledgeable about gravel riding, and so they feel they've really learned something while they've been on holiday.
Absolutely, that's one of the best things for me in doing this.
Yeah, and it's all kind of because there's the technical side of things, the preparation, but you're also a mental coach, helping people. Yeah, I can imagine that you have to be a man of many talents, and like you have to be very flexible with, because every group will be different, every ride will be different, the weather conditions will be different. What is the best thing about your job?
Well, I think it is that thing we've just been talking about, that getting the feedback, getting the reward from helping people to enjoy new areas and new skills. That's got to be the best bit.
What do you do in advance of a trip in order to try and make it run smoothly? Because presumably it isn't just a case of turning up, riding your bike, going home again. Presumably you have quite a lot of preparation that you do in advance. So what kind of things would you typically do before a trip starts?
Well, it goes right back to the design of the holiday, and I think the trip that you guys from Gravel Union did early in the year was one that we designed in the Northumberland Scottish borders area. We did a lot of map work on that and wrecking work, which Ollie got dragged along on in some pretty horrible conditions.
It was very wet, wasn't it? And then dark at the end as well.
But we were basically wrecking on that day. I think Ollie's done a write-up for Gravel Union. We basically did 2 days worth of riding in one recce on one of the shortest days of the year, and were surprised when it got dark. But so it's that preparation. That day we discovered there were certain trails that were unrideable even in good conditions, and some that simply didn't exist in the real world, or they were there on the maps. So there's that bit. There is the organisation, the holiday logistics, the hotels, the back-to-back, having suitable places to meet up with the colleague who's driving the van that day, which is sometimes me, for a coffee stop and a snack stop to keep people fueled and happy. Everything is risk assessed. We look at the mitigation of those risks that were identified as well. And then personally, it's making sure I remind myself, get familiar with the particular trip that I'm working on, and then looking after my kit, my bike, all the safety stuff, and the checks that we do on customer equipment as well.
So it's a heck of a lot more than just riding your bike, isn't it? And I guess that's perhaps what your customers don't see, is all the work that goes on in the background to make sure that things run smoothly and that you do know where the good riding is, where the nice coffee spot is, where the best view is for lunch, all the little things that make a ride kind of a brilliant ride rather than just an okay ride. And your customers won't see that, or they won't know that you're doing it, but it's completely vital that it does get done before the holiday starts.
They do get a bit of an insight, because if you're spending a whole week with them, they realise what the guys are doing day to day to make the start of the day a smooth start. And when the bikes disappear at the end of the day and they come back, maybe lubed and cleaned if it's been a really grim day, they see that stuff happening. And I've had several times people towards the end of a trip saying, "Oh, I'd thought about doing this, but there's much more to it than I'd ever imagined. Now I can see it close up."
Yeah, it's much more complicated. Like in many jobs, people have a perception of what you're doing, but when you're closer to the professional, you learn that it's more than just the Instagram photos that you're making.
Absolutely.
What kind of things do you carry with you, Francis, if you're out on, let's say if you're going to go and do a Northumberland and Scottish Borders trip where it might be cold, it might be wet, it might be midgy? What kind of things would you carry with you personally to make sure that you can deal with most things that could go wrong?
So the obvious for every trip are your first aid kit, your toolkit, your spares, food and drink, the right clothing, an emergency shelter if you're in proper remote areas where support is some time off if somebody did have a nasty fall or something. I'll always have a bag of sweets or a mix of nuts and raisins or something. That it's not just for me, it also raises the spirits of tired and grumpy people who are getting towards the end of their energy levels.
I remember last year you and I went out and did a big ride with some friends, and you'd snuck a little cooler full of beers into the car for the end of the ride, so that when we finished, you opened the door of the car and you had some beers in there, and the amount of goodwill and inspiration that created for such a simple thing was incredible. So it's that kind of thing you want to try to do with your paying customers as well as your friends, isn't it, I presume?
Yeah, the beers in the car is riding with buddies, and there's always an alcohol free for the one who's driving. But in most cases with those customers, we'll finish the day somewhere where there's a cold beer available.
Well, the beers afterwards always taste better after a long ride.
Yes.
Certainly do. Where, Francis, where's your favourite place to ride? If you could only ride one place forever onwards, where would it be?
Well, I usually say that my favourite place to ride is wherever I happen to be on my bike that day. Carlo talked about changing weather conditions. There's some of the coastal trails up in the Outer Hebrides. The light changes every time you're there. I've ridden up there more than a dozen times guiding, and it's just a fantastic place to go back to. We've been talking about the Northumberland Scottish Borders. Again, it's an area you go back to time and time again, and it changes, and there are so many more trails to go looking for too. And the mention of Croatia, I've guided a mountain bike trip in Istria. Some of the coastal trails there on mountain bike is something I'd love to go back to with a gravel bike and look into the sort of riding gravel in that area.
Is some of your job about thinking where's next, where else should we be running holidays? Do you get involved in that side of it as sort of kind of the planning rather than just the actual doing?
With Skedaddle, they have an annual guide week get together, and one of the things that is part of that is talking about where else could we run trips, where are some good recommendations, and there's a huge pool of experience that comes into that. Over this year particularly, I've been involved in developing new holidays, and that's been particularly on the gravel biking side. So yeah, I've spent a good few weeks this year doing development work and getting paid to ride on my own at times.
Ideal.
And where did you do that? What new holidays did you design?
So the Kielder one that you had a taster of.
Yeah.
And some development work on one up in the Argyll area in Scotland.
So that's another completely different side of the because then you're out there on your own or with a colleague.
Yeah, on those I was out there on my own, self-supported on one. With the more local one, we managed to design the recce's as day rides rather than although the holiday is a point-to-point ride, we did we reconfigured the different sections we wanted to include into day rides.
Ah, okay. So
For the recce.
yeah. Then you have the multiple options there. And how does it feel? Because once I also a long time ago, a Dutch tennis player said when asked the question, you must love the fact that you turned your hobby into your profession, and he answered, "Yeah, but I lost the hobby." How do you do that? Do you still ride your bike as a hobby, or are you always scouting, seeing things from a guide perspective?
I absolutely do ride my bike as a bikes as a hobby. It still makes me smile. I'm not sure if it's the professional guide in me that makes me think in a certain way when I'm thinking where does that little trail go to, or whether I was always like that way.
And that's why you became a guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because in a group you always have people who always take the same routes. We go left here. We always go left here, and there's one or two who say why don't we take a right? I did a ride last week with John actually.
Yeah,
who was our last guest on the show, and he had a route that surprised me in my own backyard. I was never knew that we could take a right here. So I think that's also in you and in your own character as a rider, that you want to explore new things and also want to show them off, want to have the experience also open to others.
Yeah, there's some close friends I've ridden with for years and years that, particularly during the winter rides, we determined that there will be some new sections of trail on every ride. And it is weird, like you say, you come to a junction and you're almost reflex to turn left. And you go, no, today we're going to turn right.
Good to see what's down there.
Yeah. It's the when you ride when you drive your car to do your work, the commute ride, and then you going to with friends to do something completely different, and you automatically take an exit because you always take that exit. It's the same, and then you have to. Yeah. If you're reprogrammed to try new things, that it's always fun to be discovering new things. You have an off season and an on season. How long is your season? When does it start? When does it end? Or is it just a year around?
It is, for me, it's from April to October. It's usually early October. This year I had some extra development work to do, so I was riding professionally till the end of October. And then through the winter off season, you kind of you can actually choose whether you go out and ride that day. If the weather looks really grim, you don't have to do it. We're during the off season because that's the hobby. When you're riding professionally, people have booked a week's holiday. Unless conditions are such that it's going to be dangerous, you go out and ride, and that comes back to having the right kit for and being prepared properly for anything.
So you take the off season time to ride your bike, but also to probably have some good rest, and because you need to. Physically, you need to be in good shape to, I think you should at least be as fit as the fittest rider in a group. Or how do you see that?
You can never be quicker than the quickest rider in the group. The guide that thinks they can do that or aims to do that will grind themselves into the ground.
You can be cleverer, though, presumably, instead. If you can't be the fastest, you can have better trail knowledge, or you... that's a good question. Yeah. Let's say if you get an elite level racer turns up on one of your trips, what would you do to try and keep them happy and not wear yourself out trying to keep up with them?
There are a mixture of techniques.
We don't want to give away all your trade secrets.
No, I mean some of them are open secrets. The classic, if you've got a lot of gates, you get the fastest fastest person in the group to get to the gate and hold the gate for everybody else, and then they're playing catch up. Yeah. There's the other old one. You get to the start of a climb, and you ask them to tell you their life story. So you get them talking all the way. Yeah. There was one guy. Yeah, I said, oh, this PhD that you've done, can you explain what that's all about? And it was some technical medical stuff and chemistry stuff, but I had just enough of a skim of knowledge to keep him talking for a climb that went on for about 25 minutes. He knew I was doing it. He knew I was doing it because he was the strongest rider in the group, but it meant that the weight at the top of the climb was much less than it would have been otherwise.
Yeah. Clever.
There's a lot of psychology, isn't there, goes into it, I presume, trying people management skills.
Yeah. And the other thing is reminding people they've come on a group holiday. I mean, we have had somebody that raced at a fairly high level who was on a group holiday kind of as a rehab from injury, and she was great because she knew people who guided as well, and came to me one day and said, "Is it okay if I do this hill twice?"
Yeah.
So I'm saying, go for it. Go to the top, come back down, and we'll see you again when you come past us.
Be nice to be that fit.
I was thinking, you had probably some strange experiences. What is the weirdest thing that you ever encountered on one of your rides?
Something you can tell us about anyway. Presumably there's things that you can't mention.
I don't know about the weirdest, but there's sometimes I've had a couple of occasions where I've had to red card people's cycling attire on the basis that the lycra is just worn too thin and is really not fit for public use.
Hopefully not white bibs.
See-through white bibs.
Well, it might as well have been on occasion.
Oh yeah, that's a bad one.
Not good.
And improvising is part of the job. When do you? Well, maybe you can share us a story that you think afterwards. We did a good job because we needed to improvise, but we solved everything and we came whole in one piece as a group.
I should think bike mechanics. There's bound to be occasions where you needed some zip ties.
Mechanic fixes. It was a colleague I was working with who, for a snapped brake lever, improvised with a tire lever. So zip ties and tire lever. Zip ties will cover a lot of things. There are all sorts of hacks that you pinch the best ideas of people you work with, and you take those with you for the next time.
So you have to MacGyver a lot.
Absolutely.
So duct tape and tie wraps are always in
essential part of the kit. Yeah.
Yeah.
What? So we've done that's physical stuff. What about mental issues? Have you ever had customers? I was thinking skills is a good example. Maybe they've come on a trip and it's above their pay grade in terms of their ability level. What could you do to help them improve, or to without sounding like a school teacher or without sounding like the dad? How do you help teach people to improve their riding so that they get more out of the holiday?
Part of that is knowing the trips and the trails well and advising when or which bits are best sat out or avoided, and which bits will test the skills but will actually help build the confidence.
Okay.
And that's about local trail knowledge.
Because confidence and staying within their own skill envelope, that's something that you see. Do you see development? When you have a week with people, do you see them grow as a rider, as a person? How do you see that?
Yes, you do. It's a really strange one as well, and you couldn't line the group up at the beginning of the week and say that person's going to get more fatigued all week. This person's going to get tired for a couple of days and then bounce back. And this person who might look like the unlikely contender is just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger all week. But supporting those and realizing that with the right support, somebody who's on a dip can bounce back as well. So it's about encouragement.
Yeah. Positive feedback is probably one of the things that you're doing in the entire day. So not focusing on the negatives, but focusing on the positives. Also to get people.
That's absolutely right.
And a sweet or a coffee stop or a beer at the end is something that really can motivate people. It's all in the smaller things of life.
Yes.
As you said, even having a bag of nuts and sweets and stuff accessible can make all the difference, can it? Sometimes, we know that from our Friday rides. If it's cold and wet, and you're getting hungry, you're running out of energy, then something really small can make all the difference.
What's the biggest? Because afterwards, people had a great week. You say goodbye, and sometimes I think probably people will be getting back to you. What's the biggest compliment that you ever received as a guide? What made you made you think, well, this is why I'm doing this?
We get feedback from the clients on the trips, and there's been some wonderful stuff back to the I never thought I'd be able to do this, but these guys helped me through it.
Mm-hmm.
One very concise feedback I saw this year. It was about me specifically, just 3 words: safe but fun.
Well, that's the essence. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because you're responsible at the end of the day. Because that's what you feel probably as a guide. You're responsible for the group. You have to.
Yes, yeah,
A safe return is the first on the priority list.
absolutely right.
If you were going to describe your job to some, say, I don't know, say if you're doing recruitment for next year, and you had to try and succinctly say what does your job involve, why you should consider this as a career, how would you sell it to someone?
The motivation has to be wanting to help other people enjoy their riding and develop their riding. And that's, for me, that's the absolute key. If you're doing it for another reason, it's not right.
Yeah, because I think looking at your job, one of the things that people think is, okay, I can ride my bike the entire day. But it's just the other way around. You help people riding their bikes rather than riding it yourself. So that's something they have to take into consideration. People trying.
And that's again the you asked about the off season, trying to keep up with this guy Ollie here.
Yeah.
That's part of my off season. Riding with people
training.
who are younger and quicker than me it keeps me on my toes as well.
But in your character, you need to be service minded. You need to serve people rather than you're not going to step up front saying I'm this, I'm that. No, you have to be in the group. You lead them, but not in a boasting way, or those groups that are always
absolutely not. No, it's a modest, assured, professional way.
Yeah.
That's supportive of everybody.
So it's leadership in serving the group. So everything should be aimed at safety first, always, but also to have everybody in the group needs to have fun, and not only just a few.
That's a really nice way to sum it up, Carlo.
Okay, well, it's funny to see that because I did a few group rides myself, and when you're riding with friends, well, we think everybody's equal in the group, but there's always a natural leader saying this, saying that, and sometimes it's a little metal on metal here and there. But I rode with the best guides are the ones that you hardly notice. They're around, they help you out, and they only step up at those points that it's getting critical. As safety, no, we're not going to do this, or the weather is changing, and so it's as you said, I think it's a modest role. So to keep as much as possible in the background, but making sure that that everybody stays within the green and not in the orange, and certainly not in the red, because
that's my aim always.
Yeah, so that's nice. Well, it's good to have an insight from a professional on the job, and I honestly think that some people who are listening in now will probably think, well, not for me, not for me.
It does need a quite specific. It's not even a skill set; it's a mindset.
Yeah,
is my suspicion that you've got to have the right characteristics as well as the physical skills and the knowledge and the training. But it's a lot of it is about your personality.
I have
very much the people skills rather than the biking skills.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, and it's maybe that's an eye opener to many, because it's when you hear your story, it's obvious. But I think that it's that most people look at it from a rider's perspective rather than the personal aspect. And talking about numbers, you have your season. How many kilometers or miles do you ride during your work? So because you're a professional rider, how many kilometers do you do?
I don't tot it up. I don't. I mean, it's probably there on a Strava somewhere.
Yeah.
Probably 10,000 kilometers, maybe more. I don't know.
Yeah. So you're not at all into numbers. It's also a fun.
I'm not a data fiend. I don't run a power meter. Yes. I'm interested in how far I've been, but I don't want to check that I've ridden as far as the next guy, or I've done 25,000 kilometers this year, or no. It's about the riding, the quality of the riding, rather than just the numbers.
And looking back, because you changed jobs, well, a while back already.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that change? Looking back to it, was it the right thing to do? Are you happy with what you're doing right now, or do you are you looking for another?
So.
Oh.
There's no way I want to go back to spending most of my life stuck behind a desk or on a train somewhere. This is way better.
So it was the best decision to make.
It was definitely the right decision to make. Yeah.
Yeah, we're also involved. Like our hobby, Olly. We're also involved.
Funny, isn't it?
Yeah,
your passion is also your profession. It's quite strange.
It's we're talking and writing and doing website and everything on gravel, which is also a passion for us. So it's nice to. I would love to ride with you, Francis, next time around in Newcastle. I have a.
We'll arrange that for next year when the weather's better.
That would be great, Carlo. So we'll work on some new routes for you that you haven't tried yet.
And I will ask your story of your life when going up a long climb, so I can keep up. Olly, I think we have covered most of it. Do you have anything on your list of questions still to ask?
We ought to ask Francis the question we ask everybody, which is if you could only have one bike, what would it be? And it doesn't need to be a gravel bike necessarily, but what would your choice be, Francis, if you could only have one for the next year?
Well, I'm sure there is only one correct answer for this question, but Olly will know that I was a bit of a gravel denier, shall we say, for some time. That I would insist for a long time that no, I'm riding. This is a cyclocross bike. I'm riding a cyclocross bike, and this bike, even when it was morphing into the gravel direction that it's now got a gravel drivetrain on it. It's got tires that are wider but still unfashionably narrow by gravel standards because of the setup of it being a cross frame originally. But that bike for me means you can give yourself the same sort of workout you get on a road bike. You can tackle some gnarly stuff that many people might have second thoughts about, even on a hardtail mountain bike. And it just gives you such freedom. So I know it's predictable, but I'm going to have to go with the gravel bike as the answer, even if I do insist on calling it a cyclocross bike.
So yeah, it's a cyclocross slash gravel bike then.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Francis, for joining us in today's episode. Is there a famous last question, Olly, or shall we go on to the outro bit?
I think we've got through everything. We came up with some new questions that we hadn't even thought of before. So yeah, I think we've covered it all.
Well, thank you very much, Francis. Let's go to the outro. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on this month's edition of Gravel Union Talks. If you have any suggestions or topics you would like us to feature in future shows, then please post a comment on our Facebook page, get in touch through Instagram, or send us an email, info@gravelunion.cc. And we'll do our best to fit it in our schedule. Olly will do the job. So if you reach out to Insta or email, Olly will be getting back to you. Please like and star us on your favorite podcast platform and make sure to leave some hopefully positive remarks. Don't forget, if you like what you've heard in this episode, there's loads more great stories, features, news pieces and all the latest gravel event information over on the gravelunion.cc website. Special thanks to Martijn for designing our very own music and jingles, and Ruben for editing the show. Thank you all for listening. Hope you can join us next time at Gravel Union Talks. Cheers, bye-bye.